grammar, and specifically English grammar, the topic that is to be discussed today is a set of rules and structures that govern the composition of words, phrases, and sentences in a language. It includes the study of morphology, syntax, and semantics. Grammar also provides the framework for effective communication, language acquisition, and literacy. There are different types of grammar, including descriptive grammar that focuses on describing how language is actually used. There is prescriptive grammar that focuses on prescribing how language should be used. And there is also theoretical grammar that examines the underlying principles and structures of language. Grammar is a fundamental aspect of language, and its study has been ongoing for centuries. Understanding grammar is essential for effective communication, language acquisition, and literacy. Discussing grammar, we should go phase by phase to its development and study the particular uh, function of that terminology in that age, and then we should know its limitations too. First of all, we should develop a question in us: what is that traditional grammar in English, and who are the grammarians? Traditional grammar in English refers to the study of the structure and rules of the English language, focusing on the analysis of words, phrases, and sentences. It is based on the principles of Latin grammar and was influential from the 16th to the 20th centuries. Some key features of the traditional grammar include parts of speech, that means classification of words into categories such as nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, pronouns, prepositions, conjunctions, and interjections. Secondly, inflectional morphology, study of how words change form to indicate grammatical function such as verb conjugation and noun declension. And thirdly, it also studies syntax. Syntax, that means analysis of sentence structure, including word order, phrase structure, and clause relationships. Some notable grammarians who contributed to traditional grammar in English include William Buckner from 1531 to 1609 and published the first English grammar book, Brief Grammar for English. And he published it in 1586. Then came Robert Loth from 1710 to 1787. He wrote a short introduction to English grammar in 1762, which became a widely used textbook. And later came Lindley Moray, published a book named English Grammar in 1795, which was influential in standardizing English grammar rules. And Noah Webster from 1758 to 1843 wrote a grammatical institute of the English language, which aimed to simplify and standardize English grammar. And also Henry Sweet, who published a new English grammar in 1892, which is considered a landmark work in the development of modern English grammar. These grammarians, along with others, helped shape the understanding and teaching of English grammar, laying the foundation for later linguistic and grammatical theories. We should also understand at the same time what are the limits of traditional grammar, why such a grammar came to a close there, and then came other ways of approach to English grammar. Traditional grammar, which was influential from the 16th to the 20th centuries, has severe and several limitations. It overemphasizes Latin. Traditional grammar was heavily based on Latin grammar, which led to the imposition of Latin grammatical structures in English. This resulted in inaccurate descriptions of English grammar, and it is very prescriptive. Second limitation is prescriptive approach. Traditional grammar was prescriptive, meaning it focused on how language should be used rather than how it is actually used. This led to a focus on correct grammar rather than understanding language as it is used in context. And thirdly, it is lack of attention to context. Traditional grammar often ignored the context in which language is used, leading to oversimplifications and inaccuracies. Fourth limitation is insufficient attention to linguistic variation. Traditional grammar tended to focus on a single standardized form of English, ignoring linguistic variation across regions, social classes, and ethnic groups. Fifth limitation is it has inadequate treatment of syntax. Traditional grammar often struggled to account for the complexities of English syntax, leading to oversimplification and inaccuracies. The sixth limitation is its failure to account for language change. Traditional grammar often failed to recognize and account for language change over time, leading to outdated and inaccurate descriptions of English grammar. It has another limitation too: lack of empirical evidence. Traditional grammar was often based on intuition and authority rather than empirical evidence and observation. Its inability to handle linguistic ambiguity is also another limitation. Traditional grammar often struggled to account for linguistic ambiguity, such as words with multiple meanings or sentences with multiple interpretations. These limitations led to the development of new approaches to grammar, such as structural grammar, generative grammar, and cognitive grammar, which aim to provide more accurate and comprehensive descriptions of language. Let us simplify it. In traditional grammar, the grammarians said, all the naming words are nouns, but they could not find a place to think of the term gerund that is also again grouped under the naming words. So such type of exceptions were aplenty while discussing about nouns. And now let us come to the later development of grammar. What grammar comes next to traditional grammar? It is the next significant development in the study of English grammar is structural grammar, also otherwise known as descriptive grammar. Structural grammar emerged in the mid 20th century, primarily through the work of linguistics and linguists such as Leonard Bloomfield, Zelig Harris, and Noam Chomsky. Key features of this structural grammar include focus and structure, use of linguistic models, emphasis and description. Let us think of focus and structure. Analysis of the internal structure of language, including phonology, morphology, and syntax. And while thinking of the linguistic models, it says development of theoretical models to describe language structure, such as the use of tree diagrams and phrase structure rules. And lastly, talking about the emphasis and description is to aim at describing language as it is actually used rather than prescribing how it should be used. Some notable works that present the transition from traditional to structural grammar include Bloomfield's Language, a very seminal essay, a comprehensive introduction to linguistics that laid to the groundwork for structural grammar, and Harris' Methods in Structural Linguistics, published in 1951, an influential work that developed this theory and methods of structural linguistics, and Chomsky's Syntactic Structures, published in 1957. It is a groundbreaking work that introduced the theory of generative grammar, which revolutionized the field of linguistics. Structural grammar paved the way for further developments in linguistic theory, including generative grammar, transformational generative grammar, and cognitive grammar. And let us understand what are the limitations of this particular type of grammar or structural grammar. It has its own limitations too. Some notable structural grammarians also think of its limitations. Leonard Bloomfield saw Bloomfield, an American linguist, to develop the theory of structural linguistics, and J. Lee Harris, an American linguist who worked on the structural analysis, also Noam Chomsky, along with Charles C. Fries. They found they talked about the structural grammar, but later found structural grammar was an important development in the field of linguistics, but it has its own limitations. What are the limitations? It emphasizes on formal structure. Structural grammar focused primarily on the formal structure of language, neglecting the social and functional aspect of language use. It lacks attention to meaning. Structural grammar often ignores the meaning of language, focusing instead on the formal relationship between words and phrases. Its inability to handle linguistic variation is also there. Structural grammar struggled to account for linguistic variation across different contexts and dialects. Fourth limitation is it is too narrow to focus on syntax. Structural grammar focused primarily on syntax, neglecting other aspects of language such as phonology, morphology, and semantics. It faced difficulty in handling linguistic ambiguity. Structural grammar often struggled to account for linguistic ambiguity, such as words with multiple meanings or sentences with multiple interpretations. It lacks consideration for language acquisition. Structural grammar did not adequately consider how language is acquired and used by speakers. It is too rigid and inflexible. Structural grammar was often too rigid and inflexible, failing to account for the dynamic and creative nature of language use. These limitations led to the development of new approaches to grammar, such as generative grammar, functional grammar, and cognitive grammar, which aim to provide more comprehensive and nuanced description of language. Now, talking about the type of grammar that follows structural grammar, we shall find a new approach to the emerging grammar. It is known as generative grammar. It is developed by Noam Chomsky. A generative grammar focuses on the innate ability of humans to generate an infinite number of sentences from a finite set of rules. It is a transformational generative grammar, an extension of generative grammar. That is, transformational generative grammar explores the idea that sentences have a deep structure and a surface structure, and that transformation can occur between these two labels. Functional grammar is the third one. Functional grammar, developed by linguists such as M.A.K. Halliday, focuses on the functional aspects of language, exploring how language is used to communicate meaning and context. Then came cognitive grammar. Cognitive grammar, developed by linguists such as Ronald Lenka, explores the relationship between language and cognition, examining how language reflects and shapes our perception of the world. These new approaches to grammar built upon the foundation laid by structural grammar, but also introduced new ideas and perspectives that expanded our understanding of language. And let us create a timeline. Think of a timeline of these grammatical uh, terminologies. Structural grammar came in between 1940 to 60. Generative grammar came in between 1950 to 70. Transformational generative grammar (TGG) came in between 1960 to 1980, and from 1970 till present there is functional grammar, and from 1980 till today there is cognitive grammar. So, keeping in mind that these approaches are not mutually exclusive, and many linguists draw on insights from the multiple theories to inform their work. Now, we can think of the transformational generative grammar alone. Transformational generative grammar, or TGG, is a linguistic theory developed by Noam Chomsky in the 1950s till 1960s. It is a revolutionary approach to understanding language, structure, and generation. What are the key components? There is a deep structure, or DS, the underlying abstract representation of a sentence's meaning. There is also a surface structure, SS, the actual concrete representation of a sentence's words and phrases. Third thing is that there are transformations, rules that convert the deep structure into a surface structure. How it works? Let us think of the way it works. The deep structure represents the sentence's semantic meaning, and the transformational component applies a series of transformations to the deep structure, converting it into the surface structure. And thirdly, the surface structure is then realized as a physical sentence with words and phrases in a specific order. There are types of transformations. One is phrasal transformation, that rearranges phrases within a sentence. There is lexical transformation, replaces words or phrases with synonymous expressions. There are syntactic transformation that change the grammatical structure of a sentence. Example, deep structure, example, the dog bites the man. Transformation, in passive transformation, changing the sentence from active to passive. Surface structure, the man is beaten by the dog. Impact is transformational impact. Transformational generative grammar has had a profound impact on linguistics, cognitive science, and artificial intelligence. It challenged traditional grammar. It offered a new perspective on language structure and generation. It influenced linguistic theory and shaped the development of various linguistic theories, including generative semantics and cognitive grammar. It also inspired natural language processing and deep structure have influenced the development of natural language processing or NLP and machine translation. While TGG has undergone revisions and criticisms, its core ideas remain influential in linguistics and cognitive science. What are the limitations of TGG grammar and who are the grammarians? The TGG has a groundbreaking theory. It has several limitations. It overemphasizes on syntax. It lacks attention to language acquisition. It faces difficulty in handling linguistic variations. It is too abstract and formal. It lacks consideration for language use and context. And the critics and alternatives. Several linguistics have criticized TGG and proposed alternative theories, including George Lakoff developed generative semantics, which emphasized the role of meaning in language structure. James Macaulay proposed the theory of generative semantics, which challenges TGG's focus on syntax. Paul Postel developed the theory of relational grammar, which emphasizes the importance of relational concepts in language structure. And Michael Halliday developed systemic functional grammar, which emphasizes the social and functional aspect of language use. Notable grammarians, as everybody knows, Noam Chomsky, Maurice Halle, John Ross, and Paul Kiparsky. These grammarians, along with others, have shaped the development of TGG and continue to influence linguistic theory and research. Lastly, what is then the present concept of English grammar? The present concept of English grammar is a dynamic and evolving field, influenced by various linguistic theories and approaches. Here is an overview of the current state of English grammar. The key features are descriptive approach, corpus-based research, functional and cognitive perspective, variation and change, and influential theories and approaches are systemic functional grammar, cognitive grammar, construction grammar, and current research areas are corpus linguistics, discourse analysis, multimodal communication. The present concept of English grammar is characterized by a diverse range of theories, approaches, and research areas, reflecting the complexity and dynamic nature of language. Lastly, someone while listening to this particular topic should know what is phrase structure grammar. This particular phrase structure grammar, or PSG, is a theoretical framework in linguistics that aims to describe the structure of language in terms of phases. Developed by Noam Chomsky and others, phrase structure grammar builds upon earlier works in transformational generative grammar. The key concepts are phases, phase heads, phase boundaries. Phases in phrase structure grammar, it is here a verb phrase. This phrase involves the combination of a verb and its complements. CP, or a complementizer phrase. This phrase involves the combination of a complementizer such as that or if with a clause, and DPR, determiner phrase. This phrase involves the combination of a determiner with a noun phrase. Phrase structure grammar's goal is to simplify the theory of syntax. It aims to reduce the complexity of syntactic theory by eliminating unnecessary rules and principles. It improves the empirical coverage, seeks to provide a more accurate and comprehensive account of linguistic phenomena. It enhances the explanatory power and aims to provide a deeper understanding of the underlying mechanism and principles that govern language. The relationship to other theories it has. Phrase structure grammar is a part of a broader minimalist program in linguistics, which seeks to simplify and unify the theory of syntax. Face structure grammar also draws on insights from other linguistic theories such as transformational generative grammar and cartography. People just criticize and create controversies by talking about the complexity, the empirical adequacy, and the theoretical assumptions this particular brand of grammar possesses. Despite these criticisms, face structure grammar remains a widely discussed and influential theory in linguistics, with ongoing research and debates shaping our understanding of language structure and syntax.